It's time to rewrite our stories, all of our stories. And our stories are about our feelings. They're not about our ego. Ego is concerned about performance. Ego is concerned about how they're being received. Ego is concerned about how they're being seen. It's about visibility, it's about worthiness. Ego is still struggling with worthiness. But feelings simply are. When we acknowledge our feelings, we're not debating whether we are worthy. We simply are because we feel what we feel. Welcome to the Aquarius podcast. Happy new moon in Leo! Yay! This Leo transit is happening at the Taurus degree. Let's go over the placements for that day. So we have Sun in Leo at the Taurus degree and Moon in Leo at the Taurus degree. Talk about steady energy. As you know, Leo is a fixed sign. That's going to make for a very interesting new beginning. We also have Mercury in Leo. Solid Leo stellium energy. In addition, we're having Venus in Gemini. Mars is still in Virgo, Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn is in Aries. Keep in mind, Saturn is retrograde. Mercury in Leo is also retrograde. Uranus is in Gemini at the 0 degree. Neptune in Aries, also retrograde. And Pluto in Aquarius, retrograde. Our collective North Node in Pisces is also retrograde. Lilith is in Scorpio. Chiron is in Aries. This Leo new moon transit is asking us to remember what makes us come alive, what frees our self-expression, what makes us feel happy and joyful, what makes us feel like life is pleasurable. So having this at the Taurus moon is also bringing a quest for authenticity in terms of like steady energy. Taurus is asking us to contemplate our relationship with abundance, financial stability, patience, and with the accumulation of things that bring us comfort and stability. This is going to be a deeply emotionally bold and dramatic moon transit that will be steady in its requests for us to be reborn. A new moon in astrology is a time of rebirth. It's asking us to let go of the old and embrace the new. During the full moon, we're actively letting go of the old. And during the new moon, we're saying, now that I've identified what I don't want, what I don't like, let me focus on creating a life that I do want. So there's some questions for us to contemplate. Where in your life have you been dimming your light? Where in your life have you been feeling afraid of judgment, afraid of showing yourself as you are, afraid of being a performer? Is this stemming from shame? Is this stemming from hopelessness? Like you feel like there's nothing good in the world? Is this stemming from feeling like you've lost your light? Is this stemming from feeling like you don't want to be seen, or you feel too shy, too embarrassed, too self-conscious? Some questions to think about under this new moon. Do I feel proud of who I am as a person? When I think about being celebrated, being seen, being appreciated, how does that make me feel? Does that make me feel excited? Does that make me feel exposed? Does that make me feel anxious? Where do I basically dim my own light down out of shame? Where do I basically erode at my own stability by not speaking up for myself, not standing up for myself, and not confidently claiming my right to be who I am without guilt? Not confidently claiming my right to be appreciated for who I am as a human being. Now let's get into some of the aspects of this new moon. We're having obviously the sun conjunct the moon, especially at this similar 2nd degree, which makes this very, very powerful and impactful. The moon is also trine Saturn. The moon is sextile Uranus. I want you to know that Saturn, being retrograde, is inching towards Pisces. So we're going back. That's what retrograde means. So the degrees, although today it is at Aries at 1 degree, because it is at 1 degree, it's going to be inching towards Pisces, Saturn in Pisces. The moon is also sextile Uranus. It is trine Neptune. It's in opposition to Pluto. This transit is asking us to self-reflect on who am I truly within? What is the state of my self-esteem and my confidence? Who am I really when nobody is watching? And how do I feel about that person? This is really a psychological and emotional reboot of our core identity and our emotional wiring. Where am I longing to feel emotionally alive? And have I been hiding behind pride or protection? This new moon in Leo is bringing up feelings around words like pride, shame, embarrassment, confidence, energy, boastfulness, self-conscious, visibility, and reward. And we're talking tangible reward in terms of financial reward. And we're also talking emotional reward in terms of self-esteem. So when do I feel the most emotionally confident? I'm not performing confidence, but I'm actually confident. When do I own my power confidently? When do I own my true essence confidently? Do I allow myself to feel pleasure, or do I suppress this desire that I have to feel good about my life and to feel pleasurable? Am I afraid that my energy is too much and my thoughts are too much and my feelings are too much? Is that why I hide? Do I get enough emotional feedback from the people around me whenever I bear my vulnerability? And how safe do I feel being able to bear my vulnerability with other human beings? Mercury in Leo, trine our North Node and our moon, is inviting us to say what we really feel and to own ourselves, and to come to new realizations about who we really are. What truths about myself have I been quiet about because I was afraid of how people might receive me emotionally? It's time for us to express ourselves, to not hesitate about expressing ourselves, to be bold, to let go of anxiety. And it doesn't mean all of it has to go. It means we're refusing to allow it to control our lives. We're choosing to validate ourselves, and we're choosing to not dismiss our true, authentic experience. So, do I use my voice to connect with others? Do I own my voice? Or do I only use my voice to defend? When you're using your voice to defend, that means other people are baiting you into conversations that you don't want to have, which means you don't have power. Because those who have power use their voice to tell the world who they are. Those who don't have power only use their voice to play defense. When I communicate, do I feel heard or just understood logically? Communication is about more than factual information. It's about feelings. It's about connecting our hearts together. When you have a good conversation with somebody, it's because your heart's actually energetically touched. And the heart can only energetically touch when we're speaking from a place of authenticity, emotional vulnerability, and truth. So it's time for us to reflect on the condition of our hearts, which is what Leo is about. Leo rules the heart. What kind of heart are we using as we making our way through the world? Is our heart closed? Is it opened? Is it inviting? Is it kind? Is it generous? Is it mean? Is it angry? What kind of heart do we have? Can you give yourself emotional permission to speak what you need to speak with passion, even if other people think you're too much, or even if they don't get what you're speaking about? Venus being trine Uranus, especially Venus being in Gemini and sextile Chiron, is asking us to reinvent our values around this idea of love and connection. And Gemini is here to really heal the wound of communication. But this is more about emotional communication. Some of us may have been shamed or punished for emotionally communicating when we were children. So now we've become these adults who are afraid of our own feelings. So it's hard to have deep, meaningful connections because we don't want to get into the feelings. But the feelings is where the love is. There's no love without a heart. And to have a heart means to have feelings. So what emotional needs do you trivialize? What emotional needs you think are stupid, you think are silly, you think are too much or too complicated that you actually have? This new moon in Leo is asking you to be real about that. Because sometimes we may see qualities in other people that we admire because it's in us, but it's dormant in us. Because we've been shamed into believing that that part of us is stupid, it's silly, it's a waste of time, it's childish. So we throw it to the side, but then we see other people acting out of this energy and then we feel jealous. And then we feel competitive, and then we feel envious. When really at the root of it, what's happening is we've abandoned ourselves. We've abandoned our true, real feelings. So this new moon in Leo is asking you to get curious about the ways in which you've rejected your own feelings, the ways in which you've rejected playfulness, the ways in which you're choosing to be disconnected from your heart, and the ways in which you've closed your heart to true, real, intimate connection. Leo is about drama. It's about flair. It's about intrigue. It's about feeling emotionally safe to express yourself, whether it's a thought, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a good vibe, whether it's a dark vibe. Leos allow themselves to play with their emotions. You know, they armor themselves up emotionally by owning all of their feelings. So what would it feel like for you to embody this energy of being emotionally exactly where you are? Not where you think other people want you to be, not where you feel like is the most appropriate place to be, but exactly where you are. Mars being in Virgo at this time with Pluto in Aquarius is asking us to examine ourselves via our behavior and via our sense of integrity. This transit is revealing to yourself who you truly are on the inside. Where do you feel emotionally the most free? Where do you feel emotionally the most liberated? Where do you feel the most resentful? Where do you feel the most unseen or unappreciated? This transit is asking you to take responsibility for your competence with regards to how to run your life and run your relationships or lack thereof. You know, there is a duty element to Saturn that shows up in Aquarius. Yes, it is chaotic. Yes, it's more reckless. Yes, it's more flighty because it's air energy, but it is also responsible. There is a responsibility that we have towards ourselves to empower ourselves, to find purpose and meaning in the world, and to be responsible with our gifts, to give ourselves a chance at a very good life. And it's hard to do that when we're also making fun of our actual experience. Mars in Virgo and Pluto in Aquarius are asking us to get serious about our ability to take care of ourselves emotionally and take care of other people. So we're not able to be useful to society when we're not useful to ourselves. Okay, so it's about removing areas where we feel burnt out because we're over functioning, and instead of functioning out of obligation, we're tapping into the essence of what we feel and adjusting our productivity based on the energy flow. Jupiter in Cancer is asking us to get soft inside. You know, where am I holding back from emotional growth because I fear becoming overwhelmed or emotionally dependent? Jupiter in Cancer is asking us to nurture ourselves, to recognize where we feel overwhelmed, to take responsibility for providing ourselves comfort, to acknowledge when we feel emotionally clingy or emotionally insecure, and to choose to open up during these times so that we can connect, you know, in a meaningful way, in an authentic way with people who genuinely care about us and love us. Saturn in Aries is holding a mirror to our behavior. It's calling us to take accountability for our emotional agency. Agency is about independence. It's about having a choice. We choose our emotional world. We don't control our emotions, but we choose our emotional world. So some questions to reflect on. Where am I emotionally restricting myself to avoid the discomfort of taking responsibility for my feelings? For some of us, there's a lot of fear and shame associated with taking responsibility for our feelings. Some of us are even afraid to say, I feel embarrassed. Something as simple as that. I feel embarrassed. 3 words. For some of us, it's very difficult to say those 3 words, simple words, because we have a lot of shame around our own feelings. And to avoid feeling that shame, we restrict ourselves. We pretend that we don't feel embarrassed because we don't want the discomfort of taking full responsibility for our feelings. Other questions to consider. Am I mistaking emotional discipline for emotional denial? Being a mature adult is not about denying your feelings. Being emotionally intelligent is not about denying your feelings so you can look in control and balance at all times. This is why I'm proud of being a hot mess, especially because I'm someone that used to work as a therapist. Because I like normalizing this idea that all of us are hot messes in one way or another. And our goal is to acknowledge it, recognize it, and then doing the things that we need to do to bring ourselves back into harmony. That is a lifelong journey. It's not something you do one time and you have it figured out for life. So Saturn in Aries is asking us to recognize our pain points. Like, where do we feel the most frustrated, the most suppressed, the most restrained? Where are we the most critical of ourselves? And can we find determination to keep moving forward even when we're not getting what we want in the immediate sense? Can we still own our feelings even when our feelings are not rewarding us with emotional comfort and satisfaction? Some questions to consider. Can I hold myself accountable for how I express my feelings? It's not about the feelings. The feelings can be as big, bad, and bold as they want to be. It's how you choose to react to them. How are you behaving as a result of these feelings? Are you holding yourself accountable for how you respond to your feelings? And can you do that without minimizing your feelings? Can you do that without pretending that they're not as big, as bad as they are? That's really the work. That's what we mean when we say do the work. This is what we're talking about. Can I stand my ground, own my big bad feelings, and express them in a very candid way, in a very honest way, without judgment, even when they're ugly? Can I do that? And can I do that without necessarily lashing out and starting a war? Because the goal of that expression isn't just to war, is to get some resolve, some finality, some resolution that brings comfort. And we can't get to comfort when we're choosing to lead with violence. Violence as a way to express emotions does not bring emotional intimacy in relationships. Uranus in Gemini, being square Mars, is asking us, where do I feel emotionally scattered or emotionally overstimulated? And what deeper feelings are trying to surface underneath all of that emotional chaos? Am I distracting myself from my emotions by staying busy and mentally occupied? What is the emotional cost of trying to think my way out of difficult emotions? Because whether you want to acknowledge your difficult feelings or not, they're still there. And they're still running their show. They're still affecting you. Denying them doesn't make them disappear. You're still paying for that. There's still a cost that you have to pay for those feelings. What I'm encouraging you to do is to face them, because at least then you're in the driver's seat of those emotions. Neptune in Aries, square Venus, and trine Jupiter is bringing to light some sort of denial or illusion that we have around love and, emotional ideals. It's also bringing into focus our spiritual path forward, as we have a spiritual obligation to let our light shine. Some questions to consider. Where am I emotionally romanticizing something because the truth of the matter feels too painful to accept? Where am I deceiving myself because I don't want to feel the feelings of the reality of the situation? Am I clinging to an emotional fantasy because it helps me feel safe? Can I find beauty in the mess, in the chaos, in the reality of the situation, in the truth of it all, even if it's not perfect? It's time to assess how much dreamy energy we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and how much reality we can withstand. How much disappointment are we giving ourselves a chance to face and overcome so that we can develop hopefulness in our future? Are we yearning for a fantasy, or are we taking responsibility via emotional agency to face the ugliness of it all? Life is hard. There is no skirting around that truth. So that means nothing is beautiful without something ugly to it. That is the price we pay for life, is that we have to embrace the light with the dark. Pluto in Aquarius being opposite the sun and the moon is one of the biggest transits that we're dealing with here, because Pluto, unlike all the other placements, is not interested in how you secure comfort. Okay. So as you know, Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. Scorpio is the sister of Taurus. Taurus is exalted at the moon. So Taurus is very much so an expert at creating emotional comfort, emotional safety. The sister of Taurus, Scorpio, is not interested in that as much. Taurus wants emotional comfort to be able to function, and Scorpio has graduated to a space where they thrive in emotional discomfort. So Pluto in Aquarius, being opposite the moon and the sun, is interested in what's real, not what feels comfortable, not what feels safe. Scorpio doesn't care what makes you feel safe and comfortable. They care what's real. They care what's true. Because in the end, that's all that's going to last, is what's real and what's true. So for a lot of people, Pluto energy, Scorpio energy, Aquarius energy during these times is frightening because it brings terror. It destabilizes. It's very powerful. It exposes. It's raw. It's intense. It doesn't cut corners. And it's always changing. We're being asked to embrace that, to get out of this desire to lean towards comfort while we are betraying our true reality. Wherever you go, there you are. There's no running away from yourself. There's no running away from your true feelings. Moving to another part of the world is not going to change your feelings. The question to ask is, what parts of my emotional identity feel like they're being torn down right now? And what new self wants to be born in its place? What new self wants to be born in its place? What truths about yourself are you afraid to feel because you know it would change your world? Because you know it would change your whole life? Can you allow yourself to feel those feelings even though they feel like they're literally emotionally destroying you? And can you be brave enough to go on that journey for the sake of rebuilding your life on these new terms that feel more real, more authentic, more stable? What Scorpio knows that Taurus doesn't know is that emotional comfort can be taken from you if the definition of it is specific. Scorpio knows that when you keep the definition of it loose, it can never be taken from you because you choose what you're comfortable with at all times. But Taurus often, because they're an earth sign, allows earth, meaning society, to tell them what's comfortable and what's not. And it's very restrictive. As you know, we live in a restrictive world, where people like boxes. You're a boy or you're a girl. You're this or you're that. You're black or you're white, right? And the people that fall in between feel the wrath of being neither. That's the world we live in. And what Scorpio is saying is, there are no boxes. You choose what you're comfortable with. And that choice is terrifying for most people because most people are afraid to claim themselves. They're afraid to own their own self-destruction for the sake of rebuilding themselves. So they hang on to situations that are not emotionally nourishing. They hang on to situations that feel comfortable from the outside looking in, but uncomfortable from the inside looking out. And what Scorpio is saying is there's much more life to be gained when you live from the inside out and not the other way around. So this new moon in Leo is asking us, what feelings have I been avoiding that want my full attention now? Because by honoring them, I actually step into my full authentic power. What emotional patterns am I ready to let go of? Because I no longer need those emotional patterns to make me feel safe because I've outgrown them. I grew up from there. I no longer react in these ways that I reacted before. I no longer need that dysfunction to feel comforted. If I stop trying to control how I feel and instead felt what I feel, what could begin to heal inside of me? What healing journey will I go on if I was willing to actually honor my heart like a lion, like a proud human being, by allowing myself to feel exactly what it is that I feel? Our collective North Node in Pisces and South Node in Virgo is pulling us towards getting out of analysis and getting into being. Pisces is simply existing. Virgo is analyzing their existence. Our soul, our collective human soul, is calling us towards surrendering to divinity, to the divinity that lives within us, and to the outside forces, whether that's God or whatever you worship. It's about emotional intuition, and it's about spiritual direction. While Virgo's focus being hyper controlling because Virgo's afraid, which is really why they control, Pisces is letting go of the will because Pisces knows life has a DNA of its own. We all have a coded soul for a specific purpose, and that purpose is going to manifest itself in our lives, whether we do the right thing or the wrong thing, because everything that we do is our destiny, and that is the point. It's not easy to let go of control, but it is required in order for us to really feel deeply what we're experiencing. It's time to let go of logic over feelings, to put it simply. So ask yourself, where am I emotionally holding on to logic or to plans to avoid feeling what's happening right now, which is that I may be feeling disoriented right now. I may be feeling scared right now. I may be feeling lost right now. I may not have any answers right now. I may not know what's going on in the world right now. I may be feeling exposed right now. We're being asked to embrace that, to be spiritually open to this journey. This is a journey that the universe, God, whatever you believe in, chose for us at this specific time. So part of surrendering is embracing the journey, is being gentle with ourselves, is embracing the confusion of the journey and trusting the process. It's okay to feel anxious while we're doing this. It's okay to feel anxious while we're learning to surrender. But we have to learn how to trust our intuition. Do you trust your intuition? Or do you put logic over your intuition so you can feel safe, like you're in control, even though you're not? You have no control. I hope you realize that. You don't even control the planets and how they spin, but you think you control life? How is that possible? Nobody's in control. The universe is in control. God is in control. We're here to experience the journey that God chose us for. We're not here to control the journey. So how do you emotionally respond when life feels uncertain, when the future seems unclear? How do you cope? The answer when our North Node is in Pisces is to lean into the unknown. And this is where faith and spirituality comes in. Can I sit with emotional fog, emotional confusion, without trying to force clarity? The thing about Pisces energy that Virgo doesn't understand is that sometimes there's truth in not knowing. There's truth in accepting that I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe this is the end of life on Earth. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. And because it can go either way, I'm hopeful. And I'm grateful that I get to experience all of this. Your soul wants you to swim like the fish. Your soul wants you to flow, to vibe. The deepest growth when Pisces is a North Node comes not from controlling or not from micromanaging, not from solving problems, not from finding logical answers, but from trusting, from having faith, from letting go, from being willing to experience what is, from knowing that even in the darkest hour, there is a force out there greater than us who has a plan and who chose us to be a part of that plan. In the same way that the trees have been here for hundreds of years. I live in a community where there are lots of trees, some of them older than me. Some of these trees are 200 years old, In the same way these trees are still here living life, in spite of all the storms that have come through, there's a plan for our lives, regardless of the storms that are going on right now in the world. And we have to trust. We have to trust that whoever brought us here, whatever you call that force, the universe, God, spirit, source, that universe, that God, has a plan for your life. And regardless of what's going on, that plan is going to materialize in your life. And it's good plans. But it's not going to be easy. And just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that There is no plan. Just because the planet's in retrograde doesn't mean that there is no plan for, the rate at which each planet is spanning around. Do you understand what I mean? Sometimes things happen that disrupt the course of things. It does not mean there is no plan. These are opportunities for us to practice our faith, for us to practice believing in something greater than ourselves. Lilith being in Scorpio right now is also bringing in this kind of deep emotional truths, that we're here to face. Do I keep hidden in terms of not embracing my confidence? Do I stay hidden, or do I keep my feelings hidden because I'm afraid of being judged or controlled or abandoned? It's time for us to deal with our shame. There's a lot of power in releasing shame and resentment. There's a lot of power in embracing our sexuality and seeing betrayal as a part of life, as opposed to seeing it as the end of life. There's a lot of power in embracing your intensity. Intensity is not a bad thing, and this is what Leo knows. So when do you suppress your strong emotional reactions, and why do you do that? Who are you trying to protect when you pretend not to have big feelings, when you actually do have big feelings? Where in your emotional life do you feel is taboo to have big feelings, or do you feel it's unacceptable for you to be dramatic, for you to yell, for you to scream, for you to cry? Where in your emotional life do you feel misunderstood? How do you feel when you give yourself full permission to want what you want without excuses or apologies? Lilith in Scorpio is the guardian of our sacred emotional world. Lilith is used to being exiled. She's used to being cast aside and dismissed, but she takes her strength from that. She takes her strength from the discomfort that she creates in the world by staying true. Lilith reclaims her power by choosing to be rejected. I know that my big feelings are uncomfortable for you, but that's a you problem. I'm not going to make that a me problem and dim my light so that you can feel comfortable. And that is Lilith energy, especially Lilith in Scorpio energy. She gives herself full permission to want what she wants, to be misunderstood, and to not protect other people while she's sacrificing herself. Her first job is to protect herself, and she honors it. Chiron in Aries right now is healing our collective masculinity and our collective relationship with anger and confidence. As you know, while Leo represents confidence and ego, Aries is exalted at the sun. So there is a lot of pride in Aries that, when not managed well, can turn into abuse of power very quickly, because Aries likes to compete and naturally likes to dominate. Anger, confidence, or even asking for what we need emotionally can feel unsafe at times for some of us. But what Chiron in Aries is asking us to do is to still do it anyways. So we're not doing it to compete. We're not doing it to overpower other people. We're doing it because we owe it to ourselves to embrace ourselves, especially if the world rejects us. We owe it to ourselves to feel good about ourselves, especially if the world wants us to feel ashamed for being who we are. We owe it to ourselves to be angry at the way that the world treats us if it's an unfair way. We owe it to ourselves to refuse to feel afraid because that's what they want us to feel during these times. We owe it to ourselves to embrace feeling seen and to refuse to emotionally abandon ourselves to make other people feel emotionally safe. Emotional strength comes from not judging your feelings, not punishing yourselves or dismissing yourselves. It comes from embracing the war within. It's about refusing to emotionally abandon yourself. It's about sticking to your guns, even if other people are judging you. It's about allowing your feelings to be a source of power without necessarily abandoning them or using it to violate other people. There is a beautiful balance here when we're willing to learn self-acceptance as opposed to self-erasure. So back to what I was talking about earlier. When you use your voice to defend yourself, you're using it to prove that you're worthy, which is really at the root of it about self-erasure. Because why do you need to prove anything to anyone? You're enough. You already are enough. You're everything. And some people are not going to understand who and what you are. Some people are not going to want to hear about your pain. Some people are going to be rattled by the stories you have to tell about who and what you are. And that's okay. Your job is not to take care of them, but rather to take care of you. And taking care of you is about honoring you. Dr. Gabor, who is a trauma specialist, talks a lot about the psychology of women and how that connects to their physical body and their pain body. I saw a TikTok this week where he talked about women being at a greater likelihood of experiencing early death by 4 times when they do not express themselves. So that's one risk factor that they identified. So in other words, a woman that is disconnected from her emotional expression, which is Leo energy, that's what Leo represents in astrology, it's the heart, it's emotional expression. A woman that's disconnected from that sort of energy, playfulness, emotional expression, emotionally open, emotionally direct, emotionally blunt, is 4 times more likely to die of an early death than other women who engage in that. That shows you how important it is for us to release our feelings, whether they're good or bad. It doesn't matter. It's not about good or bad. It's about what is, okay? It's about embracing what is and living in the depths of that emotional truth. You know, emotional vulnerability can lead to pain, but it can also be a doorway to embracing ourselves fully. It's really about trusting ourselves within and allowing ourselves to be transformed by what we feel inside. Mercury in Leo is often misunderstood because of the intensity of their emotion, because Leo is naturally a very proud zodiac sign, so that comes with a lot of fiery masculine passion. And sometimes those expressions can be emotionally very, very charged when a person is in their Leo energy. So sometimes Leo will use their pride to hide their insecurities. And a lot of times that can get further if they would just start with the insecurities, with the emotional vulnerability. So some questions to consider. Am I emotionally honest in how I speak my needs, or am I performing for a role? What emotional truths have I outgrown that I'm still speaking just out of habits? Because Leo has a hard time as a fixed sign changing the channel. Saturn in Aries, especially it being in retrograde right now, is asking us to emotionally self-parent. You know, we're no longer waiting for someone to give us emotional validation. We're no longer waiting for someone to give us permission to feel our feelings. We're simply separating emotional self-control from emotional repression. We're simply rebuilding our inner authority with compassion. We're simply taking personal accountability for our feelings and letting go of shame. With Neptune being in Aries retrograde, we're being asked to examine our spiritual purpose on earth. You know, when we're acting out of those raw emotional urgencies, are we being grounded in our emotional and spiritual truths? In what ways are we projecting our feelings onto other people or onto other situations because we're afraid of owning our own soul's truth? It's time to really examine the lies we tell ourselves and pull those apart from the reality that we're living in. Pluto being retrograde in Aquarius right now is the sister sign of Leo, and it's literally the opposite of Leo energy. So we're having a little bit of a emotional clash here. On one hand, we're being asked to embrace our true authentic self and to do so with pride, but in order to get there, we have to dance with emotional vulnerability. And in doing so, we're shedding, that old emotional identity and really only embracing what's truly ours. Remember, Saturn being the co-ruler of Aquarius, Saturn is all about what's the fluff and let's get rid of it. That's how Saturn works. What's unnecessary? Saturn wants to find what's unnecessary and get rid of it because Saturn knows you're more efficient when you focus on what's necessary. So what parts of me are emotionally dying so I can finally live from a place of radical emotional truth? Who am I emotionally when I'm no longer trying to be liked, approved of, or to be acceptable to other people? Who am I emotionally when I'm no longer trying to perform? Can I grieve the emotional mask that I had to wear to survive up until this point? So Pluto is asking us to surrender to our own emotional sovereignty. It's time to embrace our emotional vulnerability and our emotional authenticity. This is not a time for cookie cutter, surface level emotional experiences. This is the real deal. This is soul mining. This is about digging deep and finding aspects of our self-esteem that no longer fit, aspects, behavioral patterns that no longer fit, emotional patterns that no longer fit, and then replacing them with new patterns that are more empowering. What am I actually feeling underneath what I'm doing? What am I actually feeling underneath what I'm saying? What am I actually feeling underneath what I'm distracting myself with? What am I actually feeling underneath what I'm hoarding, like the material things that I'm hoarding? What would it take for me to love the parts of me that feel too much, too loud, too bold, too smart, too strong, too this, too that? What would it take for me to love myself in the parts that feel not enough? What would that look like? How can I begin to show myself love in those areas? What habits, what patterns can I incorporate into my lifestyle to celebrate those parts? How can I gently let go of the parts that I used to have to hoard that I no longer need, that are now just taking space in my psyche? It's time to release so we can embrace a new version of who we are. Confidence is not about how others perceive you. Confidence is about knowing who you are, celebrating who you are, being at peace with who you are. And more importantly, it's about being able to be who you are when others reject who you are. Confidence is easy when everybody likes you, when everybody celebrates you, when everybody understands you, when everybody's clapping. This is the lesson that Leo's here to learn. It's not about the claps, they're fun. But the confidence should be about the value that we hold because of the value that we bring to ourselves and the value that we bring to the world. That can never be taken away from us. The things, the accolades, the attention, the visibility, those things can be taken away. But the value that we hold within and the value that we give other people, those blessings, that good karma, those good deeds, they're ours. Even when we die, they're ours. They're not transferable to any other soul. That is a soul contract. So our soul's obligation in Leo energy is to make the world a brighter and happier place. That's the soul contract for Leo energy. So this is time for you to ask yourself, in what ways are you using your gifts to make your world a brighter and happier place? And in what ways are you doing that for the people around you? And how can you improve that process? And do so in a consistent manner that brings meaning and value to your world, and that brings emotional resources to your world and financial resources to your world. In what ways have you been downplaying your gifts to make other people feel more comfortable because you're simply dealing with feelings of shame, while secretly being frustrated and angry that you're being undermined and not being seen? It's time to step into that power and own your true DNA. Because what you've been coded for, which is why you were sent to Earth, is what you're here to be. Not perform, but be. I'm including a diagram here so you guys can examine what this means based on which house Leo falls in for you. Now, let's go ahead and transition into the horoscope for all 12 zodiac signs. Leo rising, of course, this is going to be affecting you right at the sun. So you're being asked, Leo, to really examine your personality and how you show up in the world. I've been warning you guys that Leo energy was going to be having a challenging time this summer, and here we are. We're right in the middle of Mercury retrograde in Leo and all this Leo energy. There is a balance between pride and arrogance. It's time to find it. Leo rising, it's time for you to really look at your appearance. Look at your body, your relationship with your body, the health of your body, your relationship with the impression that you leave on others when you meet them for the first time. Your relationship with your attitude, with your identity, with your approach to life, your demeanor, how you show up in the world, how other people perceive you. It's time for you to examine that and see if that's in line with how you want to be perceived. And if the answer is yes, then do more of it. If it's no, it's time to make some changes to it. An image that allows you to be celebrated without you having to compromise, your self-esteem. Because when Leo is not healthy, they're more into arrogance than they are into confidence. Usually arrogance is used to cover up their insecurities. What you're being asked to do is actually examine those insecurities and see how you can turn those into points of strength in your life. Virgo rising, for you, this falls in the 12th house, so it's going to be time for you to take some time away and really reflect on your spiritual journey on earth. What is the reason that you're here? And what sort of karma are you creating in your life and the lives of the people around you? This is a deeply karmic transit for you. As you know, the 12th house is the house of karma in astrology when looking at all the houses. So Virgo rising, it's time for you to recognize old patterns that no longer serve you and let go of them. The 12th house is the house of endings, the house of karma, the house of healing, the house of closure. It's about spirituality, meditation, solitude. It's about old age. It's about the afterlife. It's about what's hidden. It's about what's lurking in the shadows. It's about your limiting beliefs. It's about your subconscious mind. I would encourage you to take some time, especially over the course of the next 2 weeks, to reflect on old patterns of behavior that no longer serve you. For Libra rising, this falls for you in the 11th house. This is about your friend group and your social awareness. Are you surrounded by people who encourage you to be a good person? Are you surrounded by people who encourage you to be generous, to be a humanitarian? Are you surrounded by people who encourage you to be hopeful, to be positive, to wish for a better future? Are you surrounded by people who encourage you to work to make this world a more hopeful and kind and loving place for everyone? Are you surrounded by people who are into volunteering, who are into giving back to the community, who are into sharing their resources, who are into donating to causes that are beneficial to make the world a better place? If you're not, it's time for you to find a new friend circle, because all of us are here to bless the world. We're not here to take the world with us. This is why we all die. This is not a forever ride. We're here to make our impact and leave. And we want that impact to be positive so that the good karma we leave here follows us into the next life. Moving on to Scorpio rising. For you, this falls in the 10th house. It's about your public image. It's about your career, your long-term goals, the kind of structure you're currently creating in your life. What is your reputation among your peer group? What is your status? What is your relationship with masculinity, your relationship with your brothers and your fathers? What is your relationship with fame? What is your level of expertise in the career that you're working in? It's time for you to determine what impact you want to make in the world and create the self-esteem that goes along with that. Sagittarius rising, for you, this falls in the 9th house. It might be good to go on a trip. It's time for you to increase your wisdom, to reach higher than your level of consciousness right now. It's time for you to elevate your mind, to indulge in philosophy, in a study of law and religion, to have a cross-cultural understanding of the world, to have a different relational attitude about religion. It's about learning. It's about ethics. It's about developing a personal code of ethics that allows you to feel like you're a good human being. Sagittarius is about freedom of expression, freedom of thought, but that comes from their willingness to study and to learn and to expand their consciousness, and more importantly, to hold themselves accountable for the things that they learn. Capricorn rising, for you, this falls in the 8th house. There's going to be a focus on your marriage, the resources in your marriage, the finances that you've merged with your spouse, your level of satisfaction with the sexuality in your marriage, or maybe about your own personal sexual issues. It's about issues with intimacy, how much intimacy is there in your relationship, in your marriage? Is there intimacy within yourself? Issues with inheritance, issues with taxes, with loans, with assets, with investments, with property, with joint ventures. The 8th house is about bringing an end to something so something new can develop. It's about listening to your intuition and understanding that there is a mystery to life that is spiritual. The 8th house is also about your partner's resources. How well are you managing your partner's emotional and tangible resources? What kind of leadership are you bringing into your marriage? It's also about what kind of leadership are you bringing to yourself in your own financial and emotional world. The 7th house is going to be for Aquarius. So Aquarius rising, this is about your relationships, business and marital. It's about contracts that you've signed. It's about business partners. It's about equity in relationship. It's about sharing, and making sure you're treating people fairly the way you will want to be treated. It's about interpersonal relationship and improving them for the sake of developing deep emotional bonds? Do you feel that you have healthy relationships with others in business and personal? And if not, it's time for you to come up with some new goals to improve those. Pisces, for you, this falls in the 6th house. I know the last 6 months have been brutal for you, so it's time for you to really hone in on your daily routine, focus on your health, your fitness, your analytical nature. Let it shine so it can reveal to you what are some habits, patterns, work habits, wellness habits that are hindering your growth and your confidence. It's about time for you to get organized and bring a sense of structure and usefulness back to your day. Being of service to yourself is the most important thing right now, and being of service to your pets. If you have pets, have you been neglecting them for the sake of work? And if so, it may be time for you to reconnect with that sensitivity of yours, okay? Aries rising, for you, this falls in the 5th house. This is about romance. It's about love. It's about affairs. It's about being playful. It's about art, creativity, fertility, allowing yourself to experience pleasure, joy, to be dramatic, to express yourself. Maybe you've been downplaying your voice and playing small to make other people comfortable. Maybe you've been loyal to people that have been disloyal to you. It's time for you to really give yourself freedom to own your emotional experience. And because Aries is currently retrograde in Neptune and also in Saturn, this can also have some negative implications in terms of karma. So let's say you're married, but you had an affair. This may be brought to light over the next couple of weeks. So there is that implication that I wanted to make sure that you were clear about, because Aries being retrograde in Neptune is also speaking about deceit and illusion. Or maybe if your partner had an affair, that will be brought to light in the next couple of weeks. Over the next couple of weeks to 6 months is when we feel the impact of the new moon, but it's going to be more tangible immediately 2 weeks after, and then in a lesser degree of energy over the next 6 months, okay? Moving on to the 4th house. The 4th house is for Taurus rising. As you remember, this new moon is happening at the Taurus degree. So for you, it's going to be a focus on your children, your home, your family, your roots, your self-care routine, your emotions, your relationship with femininity, your foundation, your mother, your relationship with the women in your life, and your relationship with sensitivity and femininity. Taurus rising, it might be time to reestablish that relationship if you've lost it. As you know, Taurus is exalted at the moon, so the best strength that you have is to actually connect with your feelings. Gemini rising, for you, this falls in the 3rd house. The 3rd house is a house of the mind, of thinking, of data analysis, of communication. It's a house of sibling relationships. It's about social activities. It's about hobbies, interests. It's about neighbors, early education. It's about new information. So for you, Gemini, it's about learning how your communication can feed your pride or arrogance. And so there's a lot of new opportunity here to be somebody who uses communication to strengthen yourself and strengthen the people around you, and someone who uses communication to build connections with hearts, like merge your heart with other people around hobbies, things that you find pleasurable. The more you use your communication to find pleasure and to find pride in your abilities, the more opportunities for fun are going to be presented to you. And lastly, Cancer rising, for you, this falls in the 2nd house. The 2nd house is the house of money, the house of work, of income, of daily routines, not necessarily in the sense of like the mechanics of it, but the things that we consider valuable, meaning how do we use our time. It's about values, all things that hold value, like material possessions or priorities or belief systems in terms of like our way of life, our habits, our job, our work ethic. All of that falls in the 2nd house, which is the house of Taurus. So for Cancer rising, you're being asked to really examine how you're utilizing your resources, and if you feel empowered with how you use them, or if you feel disempowered. What is your relationship with money, and what is your relationship with habits that help increase your self-esteem? This for you really is about your self-confidence and really finding healthy ways to improve your self-confidence, as opposed to continuing to use, passive aggressive, emotionally abusive ways to get your emotional needs met. So for Cancer rising, it's going to be about how do we establish healthy, true confidence that nobody can shake because it's coming from within. This new moon in Leo wants you to be brave, not just in actions, but in your emotions. Can you feel proud of yourself without being arrogant? Can you admit that you have fears without necessarily being somebody that lives in shame? Can you grieve the old version of yourself without resisting the birth of this new one? I want you to use this lunar cycle to really journal, because Leo is all about expression, whether you're speaking the words out loud or writing them, to really own your inner world, to own your feelings, whether that means crying, talking it out, whether that means yelling, expressing your creativity. Leo's about performance. So with all this energy that we're having, it's about really internally allowing yourself permission to perform what your soul wants you to reveal. Your soul is trying to share some truths with you that don't need anybody else's cosign. Are you willing to let yourself be tender and brave enough for your soul to reveal its truth to you? And when it does, are you willing to celebrate yourself without anyone else's cosign? If the answer is yes, then you've passed the test. Happy new moon in Leo. I look forward to connecting with you on August 9th when we're going to be having the full moon in Aquarius. You can book your astrology reading at intuitivehealing.com. You can also watch videos at Intuitive Healing here on YouTube for Astrology 101 content. Listen to the Aquarius podcast on Spotify, as well as here on YouTube for your horoscope. If you're interested in astrology and love connections, you can visit at Styled Under Libra. And of course, for health and wellness and holistic healing, visit at Styled Under Virgo for all of your astrology content. Thanks so much for watching.